Before the biblical God created the world, he first created the heavens, and then he created the cherubs, angels, and archangels within the heavens. The archangels were the highest-ranking angels and the primary messengers of God himself. Lucifer, the highest archangel of all time, was among these archangels. He was described as the most beautiful creature God had ever created, a magnificent being who was flawless in every way. Ezekiel 20:15 described Lucifer as perfect in his ways from the day that he was created. But Lucifer became arrogant because he was so perfect, so handsome, so divine, and so strong in comparison to his peers. His superiority over God's other creations made him arrogant, and he soon believed he should take God's place. He wished to become God. Given that he was deemed more worthy to be in God's presence than anyone else, and that he arguably understood God better than anyone else, Lucifer could think of no one better than himself to be the one to overthrow his Lord, as noted in Isaiah 14. I will ascend to heaven. The prophet Isaiah quotes what some believe is Lucifer saying, I will raise my throne above God's stars. It could even be argued that Lucifer's ambition is greater than God's, that he not only wants to take God's place, but a position even higher than God's. Lucifer's pride would drive him to act on his belief that he was more powerful than God. Pride blinded him. Pride led him down a path, and haughtiness and pride saw him begin to manipulate the other angels into serving him. After all, his intellect was superior to the other angels, so deceiving them was not out of the question. While some angels remained faithful to God, many of the fallen angels, like Lucifer, began to recognize him as the superior being. Ezekiel 28:15 mentions Lucifer was flawless in every way. He also mentions that iniquity was discovered in him, diminishing his perfection. With a third of the angels on his side, Lucifer launches an attack on God, sparking a mighty battle for the heavens, but Lucifer underestimated the strong resistance put up by another archangel, Michael. Lucifer's inability to defeat Michael in his current form is making him doubt his own perfection. According to Revelation 12:7-8, Lucifer transforms into a dragon, and there is war in heaven. Michael and his angels fight the dragon, but the dragon and his angels do not win, and their place in heaven is no longer found. Why, you may ask? Lucifer had the courage to win in the first place, though many would argue that this was blind arrogance rather than courage. Archangel Michael eventually defeats him. Because Lucifer is defeated without the need for God to intervene, this demonstrates how powerful the biblical God truly is. You could argue that God worked through Michael to defeat Lucifer. In any case, Lucifer has been completely defeated. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. Revelation 12:9 continues. This is also where we see Lucifer referred to by his other name, Satan, which he earns after being defeated. Even though Lucifer loses everything, his defeat is more than a loss of pride. He is not only rejected by God, but he is also expelled from heaven, along with all the other angels who supported him. His glory days of being the most magnificent, perfect being among all of God's creations are over, and he now plays the role of the polar opposite. I beheld Satan as lightning fell from heaven, Luke says, quoting Jesus in 10:18. According to Revelation 20:10, the devil who deceived them was cast out into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night, forever and ever. It is understood that Lucifer would not accept his sentence quietly. In fact, from the day he was cast out, he began plotting his revenge against God. Because Lucifer was no longer God's favorite creation, he would exact his vengeance on humanity, which had taken his place. When God created Adam and Eve, he put them to the test by forbidding them from eating from the tree of knowledge, seeing an opportunity to mock God. Lucifer crept into the Garden of Eden, disguised as a snake. However, the serpent is never explicitly identified as Lucifer in the early passages of Genesis that detailed Eve's temptation. The snake is merely described as a cunning animal in Genesis 3:1. As a result, it's likely that members of the faith simply believe Lucifer is this serpent. While it is taught as scripture, it is not always stated in these opening passages. Some have recounted this argument by claiming that Lucifer is referred to as the serpent. Most notably, in Revelation 12:19, he is referred to as the old serpent, and thus possibly the original serpent. Others argue that Lucifer was not the snake in the Garden of Eden, but rather manipulated the snake to speak on his behalf. However, there is no scripture to back this up. Furthermore, when we investigate the origins of Lucifer's name, we discover that Lucifer is Latin for light bringer, morning star, or even the planet Venus. But how did this name end up in a Hebrew manuscript written before Latin was even a language? Let us examine the 14th chapter of Isaiah. It's the only place in the Bible where the name Lucifer is explicitly mentioned. Isaiah 14:12, 14, 15 says, "You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. Above the stars of God, I will set my throne. I will sit on the mount of the assembly in the far reaches of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High." But you are brought down to Sheol, to the far reaches of the pit. Many believe that Isaiah is referring to Lucifer, the devil. But there is another argument that this passage is actually referring to a fallen Babylonian king, one who is mortal and not created as a divinely perfect angel. It is understood that this king sinned greatly in his persecution of Israel and likely believed that he was above the power and punishment of the biblical God. In this argument, Isaiah in this chapter seeks to explain the fall of the king, not the fall of the archangel Lucifer. In fact, his use of the term Lucifer is not universal across all translations. In some versions, Isaiah simply refers to the subject as the morning star. The Hebrew word for Venus implies that the king of Babylon, whose identity is not confirmed in Scripture, was once held in high regard before his downfall, as predicted by Isaiah. But if this is the case, and how it all became about Lucifer, the fallen angel, we don't know. But we can speculate that early Christian tribes writing in Latin at the time simply decided that this would be a great opportunity to fit in a story about a fallen angel, as in Isaiah 14:12. Thus, by the time our King James, the first English translations, arrived, St. Jerome, who was largely responsible for these translations, would incorporate Lucifer into the final version, and thus the metamorphosis of what was a Babylonian king who'd sinned for his arrogance would instead become Lucifer, the fallen angel of God. He would be incorporated into the biblical account of the fall and would eventually become canon for some believers. The same can be said of Ezekiel's words in Ezekiel 28:15, in which he says that God was perfect in his ways from the day he created him until iniquity was discovered. While many believe that Ezekiel is addressing Lucifer, other accounts indicate that Ezekiel is referring to an unnamed mortal king of Tyre. In conclusion, regardless of how you interpret Lucifer's story, whether as an unnamed Babylonian king or the fallen angel of God, the moral of the story is quite profound, echoing the old saying, pride goes before a fall, or in the biblical sense, in Proverbs 16:18, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. It demonstrates that, like Lucifer, if we are overconfident and believe we are more powerful than we are, we risk setting ourselves up for failure. The story also teaches us to be modest and thankful for what we have, and that while we should aspire, we should not rush into things or be impulsive with our desires. It also echoes the idea that we should respect our elders, parents, and those who have gone before us, because they know more than we do and have wisdom that we may not be able to comprehend at the time. Lucifer, for example, believed he was stronger than God, and despite the fact that God created him, Lucifer threw himself back in his face and against him because he believed he was better. As a result, Lucifer is exiled, demonstrating that the consequences for disrespecting those who came before us can and should be severe. Let me know what you think about Lucifer and what stories and ideas you believe in when it comes to this perplexing and yet powerful figure in the comments section. Please give the video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, guys. And thanks for watching the Bible Decoded.